If sarcasm were currency, I'd be a billionaire. Too bad it can't buy happiness or a faithful spouse. My name is Ethan Mitchell, and I'm 36 years old, with a receding hairline that my wife Claire loves to point out during arguments. I work as a financial advisor at Midwest Capital Management, where I spend my days telling people how to invest their money while watching my own marriage crumble like a house of cards in a hurricane. It was a Tuesday evening in November when Claire dropped the bombshell that would change everything. I was sitting in our living room, in our modest three-bedroom house in suburban Indianapolis, reviewing client portfolios, when she walked in wearing her power suit and that expression I'd learned to dread, the one that meant she'd made a decision without consulting me. "Ethan, we need to talk," she announced, setting down her designer purse with theatrical precision. Claire Henderson Mitchell was 34, blonde, ambitious, and worked as a senior PR specialist at Henderson and Associates. Yes, Henderson, her uncle's firm. Nepotism at its finest, though she'd kill me for saying that out loud. "What's on your mind?" I asked, not looking up from my laptop. "I want an open marriage." The words hung in the air like smoke from a house fire. I slowly closed my laptop and looked at my wife of 8 years. She stood there with her arms crossed, chin raised, as if she'd just announced she wanted Chinese takeout for dinner. "I'm sorry, what?" "You heard me. I want us to have an open marriage. I've been thinking about it for months, and I've decided it's what I need." "What you need," I repeated slowly. "And what about what I need?" Claire rolled her eyes, a gesture that had become her signature move whenever I dared to have an opinion. "This isn't about you, Ethan. This is about us growing as individuals and exploring our full potential." "Our full potential," I said, tasting each word like it was poison. "Let me guess. You've already found someone to help you explore this potential?" Her cheeks flushed slightly, which was all the confirmation I needed. "His name is Oliver Blackstone. He's an advertising executive at Morrison Creative. We met at the Henderson and Associates company mixer last month." Of course she did. Oliver Blackstone sounded like the kind of name that belonged to a guy who drove a BMW and wore expensive cologne to mask his moral bankruptcy. "So let me get this straight," I said, standing up. "You want permission to cheat on me, but you're calling it an open marriage to make it sound sophisticated." "It's not cheating if we both agree to it," Claire snapped. "And I've already drawn up some ground rules to make sure this works for both of us." She pulled out a folded document from her purse, like she was serving me legal papers. Which, in a way, she was. "Rules?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You've written rules for adultery? Don't be so dramatic. Just read them." I unfolded the paper and read aloud. "Rule 1. All extramarital relationships must be disclosed within 24 hours. Rule 2. No overnight stays at our marital home with outside partners. Rule 3. All partners must be tested for sexually transmitted diseases. Rule 4. Ethan is not permitted to engage with any of Claire's work colleagues or social circle." I looked up at her. "Rule 4 is interesting. So you get to sleep with whoever you want, but I'm restricted from an entire category of women?" "It's about maintaining professional boundaries," she said defensively. "No, it's about you wanting to have your cake and eat it too while making sure I can't do the same." I folded the paper and slipped it into my pocket. "You know what? Fine. I'll sign your little contract." Claire blinked, clearly surprised. She'd probably expected me to fight, to beg, to make a scene. Instead, I was giving her exactly what she wanted, which somehow seemed to disappoint her. "Really? Really? But I have one condition of my own." "What?" "I keep this document, forever. And if this arrangement doesn't work out the way you're planning, I reserve the right to use it however I see fit." Claire shrugged. "Fine. It's not like it says anything incriminating." Oh, sweet, naive Claire. She had no idea what she'd just handed me. 2 weeks later, I was getting a front row seat to my wife's new lifestyle. Oliver's silver BMW appeared in our driveway 3 nights a week like clockwork. He was exactly what I'd pictured. Tall, dark hair slicked back with enough gel to lubricate a small engine, and the kind of smug smile that made you want to introduce his face to your fist. The first time I saw him, he had the audacity to extend his hand for a shake. "You must be Ethan," he said with a grin that belonged in a toothpaste commercial. "Claire's told me so much about you." "I'm sure she has," I replied, giving his hand a squeeze that made his smile falter slightly. "All good things, I hope." "Of course," he said, though his eyes suggested otherwise. That night, I lay in our guest bedroom, my new permanent residence, according to Rule 2. listening to sounds I'd rather forget. The walls in our house were thin, and Oliver was apparently the vocal type. The humiliation was complete when I ran into our neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, while getting the mail the next morning. "That's a nice car your friend has," she said with a knowing look. "Very expensive looking." "Yeah, it's something," I muttered. "Claire seems happy lately, glowing, even." I wanted to tell Mrs. Patterson exactly why my wife was glowing, but instead I just nodded and retreated to my house like a wounded animal. The worst part wasn't the betrayal. It was the way Claire's friends treated the whole situation, like it was some kind of progressive social experiment. Maya Rodriguez, Claire's best friend since college, actually had the nerve to congratulate me at a neighborhood barbecue. "I think it's so mature of you to let Claire explore her sexuality," she gushed, wine glass in hand. "Most men are too insecure for this kind of arrangement." "Yeah, I'm a real pioneer," I said dryly. Jules Martinez, another member of Claire's inner circle, chimed in. "Honestly, Ethan, you should be grateful. At least now you know where you stand instead of wondering if she's cheating behind your back." "The transparency is refreshing," I agreed, taking a long sip of my beer to keep from saying what I really thought. But it was Trent Williams, Claire's colleague at the PR firm, who delivered the killing blow. "Between you and me, man, Claire's got stamina. Oliver's a lucky guy." I nearly choked on my beer. "Excuse me?" "Oh, come on," Trent laughed. "We all know what's going on. Claire doesn't exactly keep it quiet at the office. Yesterday she was practically limping after lunch. That night, I sat in my home office and did what any reasonable person would do. I started gathering intelligence. Claire had left her laptop open on the kitchen counter, and curiosity got the better of me. What I found made my stomach turn, and my blood boil simultaneously. There was a group chat called Girls' Night Out with Maya, Jules, and two other women I didn't recognize. The messages were a detailed play-by-play of Claire's sexual adventures, complete with ratings and commentary. "Oliver gets a solid 8/10," read one message from Claire. "Points deducted for finishing too quickly, but bonus points for enthusiasm." Maya had responded. "Better than the accountant from last month? Way better. That guy was a 4 at best. Ethan's still winning in the longevity department, but Oliver's got him beat everywhere else." Jules had added, "Speaking of Ethan, how's he handling all this?" "Like a whipped dog," Claire had typed. "He signed the contract without even trying to negotiate. I almost feel bad for him. Almost." I stared at the screen for a long time, feeling something cold and hard settle in my chest. At least I'd learned something new about my wife. Her favorite cocktail wasn't me anymore, but two could play this game, and I was about to become a much better player than she'd bargained for. The thing about being publicly humiliated is that it gives you a certain clarity, like when you're drowning and suddenly realize you need to stop flailing and start swimming. I spent the next 2 weeks playing the role of the compliant husband while secretly documenting everything. Claire's rules might have seemed harmless to her, but to someone with my financial background, they read like a confession. Every text message, every receipt, every late night and early morning, I cataloged it all. My brother Daniel was the first person I told about my plan. "You're going to do what?" he asked, nearly spitting out his coffee. We were sitting in Murphy's Diner on the east side of town, far from anywhere Claire or her friends might venture. "I'm going to destroy them," I said calmly, cutting into my pancakes. "Both of them, methodically, completely, and legally." Daniel Mitchell was 2 years younger than me and worked as a mechanic at Thompson's auto shop. He had grease permanently embedded under his fingernails and a vocabulary that could make a sailor blush, but he was also fiercely loyal and surprisingly strategic when the situation called for it. "Ethan, man, I get that you're pissed. Hell, I'm pissed for you. But maybe you should just divorce her and move on." "Oh, I'm definitely divorcing her. But not until I've made sure she understands exactly what she's thrown away." I pulled out my phone and showed him some of the screenshots I'd taken. Daniel's expression darkened as he read. "Jesus Christ, Ethan. She's talking about you like you're some kind of pathetic pet." Exactly. And now everyone in her social circle thinks I'm a spineless pushover who's too weak to stand up for himself. Aren't you, though?" Daniel asked bluntly. "I mean, you literally signed a contract letting her cheat on you." I smiled, and Daniel actually leaned back in his seat. "That contract is going to be the best investment I've ever made," I said. "Trust me." My first move was to consult with Rita Kowalski, a lawyer I'd known since college who specialized in family law. Rita was sharp as a razor blade and had about as much sympathy for cheating spouses as a shark has for bleeding fish. This is beautiful, she said, reviewing the open marriage contract in her downtown office. She basically documented her own adultery and signed it. That's what I was thinking. How much trouble is she in? In Indiana? Plenty. We're not a no-fault state, and this document proves willful abandonment of marital duties. Plus, if I can prove she's been using marital assets to fund these relationships, she has been. Dinners, hotels, even bought Oliver a watch last week. Rita's smile was predatory. Then we can go after her for dissipation of marital assets too. Ethan, when this is over, she's going to be lucky if she keeps her car. What about her job? That depends on how public you want to make this. I thought about Trent's comments at the barbecue, about Claire's lack of discretion at the office, about the group chat, where she rated her lovers like Yelp reviews. Very public, I said. The next phase of my plan required some reconnaissance. I started following Oliver's routine, which wasn't difficult since the man was a creature of habit. Every Tuesday and Thursday evening, he went to Elite Fitness on the north side of town. Every Friday, he had drinks at Meridian Bar with his advertising buddies. And every weekend, he spent Saturday afternoons at his country club, playing golf. It was at the gym where I overheard the conversation that pushed me from calculated revenge into something darker. I was on the treadmill, earbuds in but no music playing, when Oliver and his workout partner started talking near the weight rack. "So how's the married woman situation going?" the other guy asked. "Incredible," Oliver replied, loading plates onto a barbell. "She's insatiable, and the husband's completely whipped. Guy actually thanked me for making his wife happy." "No shit?" "I swear on my mother's grave." He shook my hand and said he was glad Claire was exploring her options. "It's like having a free pass to screw his wife whenever I want." "What's the husband like?" "Total beta male. Works in finance, drives a Honda Civic, probably hasn't seen the inside of a gym in 5 years. Claire says he's boring in bed and even worse out of it." "And you believe her?" Oliver laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Dude, I've been in their house. The guy sleeps in the guest room and does the dishes while Claire and I are upstairs. He's basically a live-in maid who pays the mortgage." "That's cold, man. That's life. Some guys are lions, some guys are sheep. Ethan Mitchell is definitely a sheep." I continued running on the treadmill, my pace steady, my breathing controlled. But inside, something had snapped. I wasn't angry anymore. I was focused. That night, I made my first move. Oliver's BMW was parked in my driveway again, and I could hear Claire's theatrical moaning through the bedroom window. I walked out to his car with a bag of sugar and a key I'd picked up at the hardware store. The sugar went into his gas tank. The key went along the driver's side door, carving the word cheater in letters 6 inches tall. Then I went back inside, made myself a sandwich, and waited. 20 minutes later, I heard shouting from the driveway. I looked out the window to see Oliver standing next to his vandalized car, Claire beside him in her robe, both of them gesturing wildly. I opened the front door and stepped outside, putting on my best concerned expression. "Everything okay out here?" I asked. "Some asshole keyed my car," Oliver snarled. "And I think they put something in my gas tank." "That's terrible," I said, shaking my head. "You should call the police. I'm going to find out who did this and make them pay." "I hope you do. Nobody deserves to have their property vandalized." Claire shot me a suspicious look, but I kept my expression neutral. Oliver called a tow truck and spent the next hour pacing around my driveway, cursing and making threats. I offered him a beer, which he declined with a glare that could have melted steel. "You know," I said conversationally, "this kind of thing happens a lot in neighborhoods where people don't mind their own business. Maybe someone saw something they didn't like." "What's that supposed to mean?" Oliver demanded. "Nothing specific. Just that some people have strong opinions about unconventional relationships." Claire's face went pale. She was starting to realize that maybe her husband wasn't as spineless as she'd thought. But I was just getting started. 2 days later, I implemented phase 2 of my plan. I'd done some research on Oliver and discovered that his ex-wife, Jessica Blackstone, lived about 20 minutes away in Carmel. According to her social media profiles, she was a real estate agent who'd kept Oliver's last name for professional reasons. I called her office and scheduled a consultation about selling a property. Jessica Blackstone was everything Claire wasn't: understated, professional, and genuinely intelligent. She was also, I discovered, completely unaware of her ex-husband's current activities. I have to admit, Mr. Mitchell, I'm curious why you specifically requested me as your agent, she said as we sat in her office reviewing fake property listings I'd printed from the internet. Actually, I wanted to talk to you about Oliver. And her expression immediately hardened. If this is about getting back together, you can save your breath. That ship sailed when I caught him cheating with his secretary. It's not about reconciliation. It's about warning you that he's doing it again. I showed her the photos I'd taken of Oliver's car in my driveway, along with some of the more damning text messages from Claire's group chat. He's having an affair with my wife, I explained. And based on these messages, it's not his first rodeo since your divorce. Jessica studied the evidence with the careful attention of someone who'd been burned before. When she looked up, her eyes were cold as winter. What do you want from me? She asked. Nothing. I just thought you should know, in case it affects any ongoing legal or financial arrangements between you two. It might, she said slowly. Our divorce agreement includes a morality clause. If I can prove he's been engaging in adultery, I can reopen the settlement. That's interesting. Very interesting. She handed me back the photos. Thank you for bringing this to my attention, Mr. Mitchell, and good luck with your own situation. I have a feeling I won't need luck, I said. The beautiful thing about revenge is that once you start, it develops its own momentum. Like a boulder rolling downhill, it picks up speed and mass until it becomes unstoppable. Claire's first hint that the game had changed came at Maya's birthday party the following weekend. It was held at the Meridian, an upscale restaurant downtown where Claire's crowd liked to see and be seen. I'd initially planned to skip it, but then I realized it was the perfect opportunity for phase 3 of my plan. I arrived fashionably late, wearing my best suit and a smile that didn't reach my eyes. Claire was already there with Oliver, holding court at a corner table with Maya, Jules, Trent, and several other people from their social circle. Ethan, Maya called out, waving me over with the enthusiasm of someone who'd already had too much wine. I didn't think you were coming. Wouldn't miss it, I said, taking the empty chair directly across from Oliver. Happy birthday, Maya. Thanks, sweetie. You look great. Doesn't he look great, everyone? There was a murmur of agreement around the table, though Claire looked like she'd swallowed something sour. So, Ethan, Trent said with a smirk, how are you adjusting to the new arrangement? It's been educational, I replied, signaling the waitress for a drink. I've learned a lot about people's true natures. That's so mature of you, Jules gushed. Most men would be threatened by their wife's sexual liberation. Ugh, I'm not threatened at all. In fact, I'm grateful for the clarity. Oliver leaned forward, his expression smug. Clarity about what? I looked directly at him, my smile never wavering. About who my real friends are, and who my enemies are. The temperature at the table seemed to drop 10 degrees. Claire kicked me under the table, but I ignored her. Speaking of clarity, I continued, pulling out my phone. I thought you all might be interested in seeing some of the feedback Claire's been sharing about her recent experiences. I started reading from the group chat screenshots I'd saved. Oliver gets a solid 8/10, points deducted for finishing too quickly, but bonus points for enthusiasm. Maya's wine glass froze halfway to her lips. Jules went pale. Trent looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. Ethan, stop, Claire hissed. Oh, but there's more, I said cheerfully. Here's another good one. Better than the accountant from last month. That guy was a 4 at best. Ethan's still winning in the longevity department, but Oliver's got him beat everywhere else. Oliver's face had gone from smug to murderous. You son of a bitch. And my personal favorite, I continued, like a whipped dog. He signed the contract without even trying to negotiate. I almost feel bad for him. Almost. I put my phone away and looked around the table at the stunned faces. So thank you all for your concern about my feelings. It's clear you've been very thoughtful about this whole situation. I stood up, dropped a 20 on the table for my drink, and leaned down to whisper in Oliver's ear. By the way, your ex-wife says hello. She's very interested in your recent activities. I walked out of the restaurant feeling lighter than I had in months. Behind me, I could hear voices rising in what sounded like the beginning of a spectacular argument. The fallout was immediate and satisfying. By Monday morning, my phone was buzzing with text messages from various members of Claire's social circle, all trying to do damage control or distance themselves from the situation. Maya, Ethan, I'm so sorry. I had no idea Claire was sharing those things publicly. Jules, we were just being supportive. We never meant to hurt you. Even Trent sent a message. Dude, that was brutal at the restaurant. Maybe we should talk. But the most interesting message came from someone I'd never heard from before. Oliver's boss at Morrison Creative. Mr. Mitchell, this is David Morrison. I think we need to have a conversation about one of my employees. Can you come to my office this afternoon? Morrison Creative occupied the top 3 floors of a glass tower in downtown Indianapolis. David Morrison was a man in his 50s, with silver hair and the kind of presence that commanded attention without demanding it. Mr. Mitchell, he said, gesturing to a chair across from his desk. I understand you have some information about Oliver Blackstone that might be relevant to his employment here. That depends on what kind of information you're looking for. The kind that might affect his ability to represent our company professionally. I pulled out my phone and showed him the same screenshots I'd shared at Maya's birthday party, along with some additional photos of Oliver's car in my driveway, and timestamps showing when he was supposed to be working. Morrison studied the evidence with the careful attention of someone who'd built a successful business by paying attention to details. This is troubling, he said finally. Oliver represents several of our biggest clients, including some very conservative family-oriented brands. If this information became public, I understand your concern. What are you looking for here, Mr. Mitchell? Money? Some kind of settlement? Nothing like that. I just thought you should know what kind of person you have representing your company. Morrison nodded slowly. I appreciate your discretion in bringing this to my attention rather than posting it on social media. I'm not interested in destroying innocent people, I said. Just the guilty ones. 2 days later, Oliver was fired. According to the rumor mill, Morrison had discovered that Oliver had been padding his expense reports and using company time for personal activities. Technically true, though not the whole story. Claire was furious when she found out. You got him fired, she accused, cornering me in the kitchen when I got home from work. I didn't get anyone fired. I simply provided factual information to interested parties. You're destroying his life. No, Claire. He destroyed his life the moment he decided to sleep with another man's wife. I'm just helping him face the consequences. This isn't you, Ethan. You're not vindictive. I looked at my wife, really looked at her, and saw a stranger. Her face was flushed with anger, her hair disheveled, her expensive clothes wrinkled. She looked desperate, and desperation wasn't attractive on her. You're right, I said calmly. The old Ethan wasn't vindictive, but the old Ethan also didn't have a wife who rated her lovers in group chats and called him a whipped dog. Those were private conversations. Nothing's private when you leave your laptop open, sweetheart. That's Internet Security 101. Claire's eyes widened as she realized how much I knew. You've been spying on me. I've been protecting myself. There's a difference. I want a divorce. Funny, I was just thinking the same thing. I pulled out my phone and called Rita Kowalski's office. Rita, it's Ethan Mitchell. I think it's time to file those papers we discussed. Claire stared at me as I scheduled the appointment, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. You can't do this, she said when I hung up. Actually, I can. And I'm going to use that lovely contract you wrote as evidence of adultery and willful abandonment of marital duties. That contract protects both of us. Read it again, Claire. Specifically the part where you restricted my access to your social circle while giving yourself free rein. A judge is going to see that as you deliberately sabotaging any attempt at reconciliation while pursuing your own interests. For the first time since this whole mess started, Claire looked genuinely scared. Ethan, please, we can work this out. I'll end things with Oliver. We can go to counseling. Too late for that. You made your choice when you decided I was a whipped dog who'd take whatever you dished out. I didn't mean it like that. Yes, you did. And now you get to find out what happens when the dog decides to bite back. The thing about burning bridges is that you have to make sure you're on the right side of the fire when you light the match. 3 weeks after I filed for divorce, Claire's world was collapsing faster than a house of cards in an earthquake. Oliver, now unemployed and facing his own divorce proceedings thanks to Jessica's renewed legal action, had become increasingly desperate and unstable. It all came to a head on a rainy Thursday evening in December. I was working late at the office when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Oliver's number. Hello, Oliver. You son of a bitch. His voice was slurred, probably from alcohol. You destroyed my life. No, Oliver. You destroyed your own life. I just documented it. I'm going to make you pay for what you've done. Are you threatening me? Because I should mention that I'm recording this call. There was silence on the other end. Then, meet me at the Marriott downtown, room 1247. If you don't show up in 1 hour, I'm going to send every client at your firm a detailed account of your wife's sexual activities. The line went dead. I sat in my office for a moment, considering my options. I could call the police, but Oliver hadn't technically threatened violence. I could ignore him, but he was desperate enough to follow through on his threat, which would hurt innocent people at my firm. Or I could go meet him and end this thing once and for all. I chose option 3. The Marriott was a 40-story tower in the heart of downtown Indianapolis. Room 1247 was on the 12th floor, and I could hear voices inside when I knocked. Oliver opened the door, and I immediately saw that this wasn't going to be a private conversation. Claire was there, along with Maya and Jules. All of them looked like they'd been drinking. "Well, well," Oliver said, stepping aside to let me in. "The man of the hour." The hotel room was a suite with a sitting area and a bedroom visible through an open door. Empty wine bottles and room service trays were scattered around, suggesting this had been going on for a while. "What's this about, Oliver?" "This is about you ruining everything," Claire said, standing up unsteadily from the couch. "Oliver lost his job because of you. Maya and Jules are being ostracized by everyone we know because of those screenshots you shared. And I'm probably going to lose half my assets in the divorce because you gave Jessica ammunition to reopen our settlement," Oliver added. "So we decided to fight back," Maya said, holding up her phone. "We've been documenting your harassment and stalking behavior." I looked around the room at the 4 of them and started laughing. I couldn't help it. The whole situation was so absurd. "You think this is funny?" Oliver demanded. "Hilarious," I said, pulling out my own phone. "You called me here to threaten me, and now you're claiming I'm the one doing the harassing." "We have evidence," Jules said weakly. "Evidence of what?" "That I exposed your friend's group chat where she rated her sexual partners? That I informed Oliver's boss about his extracurricular activities? That I told his ex-wife about his current affair?" I looked directly at each of them. Everything I did was legal, factual, and justified. "You want to know what harassment looks like? It looks like a married woman publicly humiliating her husband while her friends cheer her on." "You signed the contract," Claire said desperately. "You agreed to the open marriage." "I signed a document that you wrote, which documented your intent to commit adultery. Thank you for that, by the way. Rita says it's the strongest evidence she's seen in 20 years of family law." Oliver stepped forward, his hands clenched into fists. "You smug bastard. You think you're so smart." "Smart enough to record this conversation," I said, holding up my phone. "And smart enough to have already sent the location and details to my brother Daniel, who's waiting in the lobby with hotel security." "You're bluffing." "Am I? Why don't you try something and find out?" The fight went out of Oliver like air from a punctured balloon. He slumped back against the wall, suddenly looking older than his 38 years. "What do you want?" he asked quietly. "I want you to understand something," I said, my voice calm and controlled. "You all made the mistake of thinking I was weak because I didn't immediately react with violence or drama. You confused patience with weakness, intelligence with cowardice." I walked to the window and looked out at the city lights below. "Claire, you wanted an open marriage because you thought I'd never have the courage to leave you. Oliver, you pursued a married woman because you thought her husband was too pathetic to fight back. Maya, Jules, you participated in humiliating me because you thought I'd never retaliate." I turned back to face them. "You were all wrong. So what happens now?" Claire asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Now you face the consequences of your choices. Claire, you'll be lucky to keep your job after I share some of these group chat screenshots with your uncle. Your reputation in this city is finished. Ethan, please, Oliver, you're unemployed, getting divorced again, and about to face a lawsuit from Jessica for violating your settlement agreement. Your advertising career is over. I've made sure every major firm in the Midwest knows exactly what kind of person you are." Oliver's face had gone completely white. "And Maya, Jules, you're collateral damage. That's what happens when you choose the wrong side in someone else's war." I headed toward the door, then stopped and looked back at them one more time. You know what the funny thing is? If Claire had just asked for a divorce 8 months ago, this all could have been avoided. But she had to be clever. She had to humiliate me. She had to make it a game. I opened the door and stepped into the hallway. "Congratulations," I called back. "You lost." 6 months later, I was sitting in my new apartment across town, reading the final divorce decree. Rita had been as good as her word. Claire got almost nothing. The house, the savings, the investments, all mine, thanks to that beautiful contract she'd written. My phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. Saw Claire at the grocery store today. She looks terrible. Asked about you. I typed back. What did you tell her? That you're doing great. New apartment, new girlfriend, new life. That last part wasn't entirely true yet, but it would be. For the first time in years, I felt like myself again. Not the whipped dog Claire had described in her group chat, but the man I'd always been underneath. Patient, intelligent, and absolutely ruthless when necessary. Oliver had moved back to his hometown in Ohio, last I heard. Maya and Jules had quietly distanced themselves from Claire once the social fallout became too toxic to ignore. And Claire herself was working at a small PR firm in Terre Haute, having been quietly let go from her uncle's company when the scandal became too much for them to ignore. I poured myself a glass of wine and raised it in a toast to the empty apartment. Here's to new beginnings, I said aloud, and to the lesson that you should never mistake kindness for weakness. War. Outside my window, the city lights twinkled like stars, and for the first time in years, the future looked bright. Some guys are lions, some guys are sheep, Oliver had said at the gym that day. He was right about that. He just got the classifications wrong. I wasn't a sheep who'd learned to be a lion. I was a lion who'd been pretending to be a sheep, waiting for the right moment to show my teeth. That moment had come and gone, and I was still standing while my enemies lay in ruins around me. Game over.